Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is vision. So when we think of the future, we're informed by the past. And oftentimes the future brings forth technologies and circumstances that we didn't even imagine. So let's look at what does it take to expand our horizon to potentially allow the future to speak to us in a way that is more expansive. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, all your electrons, all your molecules. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation and bring yourselves present right here, right now to these remarkable bodies that are our vehicle for experiencing life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Another new week. They just keep flying by, for me anyway. And today we're going to talk about vision. And I think it's really interesting to see how our vision for the future is informed by the past. And when that's the case, we don't have the capacity to. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us. Wonderful to see you this morning. And for everybody else who's joining us, it's great to have you here. We're talking about vision and how the past informs our vision for the future, where in fact, there are many circumstances that we can't begin to anticipate, many technologies and opportunities that are not a part of our present experience or of our past experience, and therefore we have no context to be able to imagine these things. And so examples, let's see, I guess examples like the internet might be something that, you know, people didn't, as a general rule, people in general do not have the ability to imagine that we would have a technology that would connect us in the way that we did. Even when the internet was first introduced, people didn't imagine that we would be using it to do business transactions, for example. It was more of a way to communicate with each other, but, you know, to be able to have everything interconnected and have cloud servers and all kinds of other permutations and evolutions of internet technology, for example, you know, maybe people wouldn't have imagined a social media network or imagined, well, if we think now about cryptocurrency, it's an emergent technology, and we haven't even really begun to experience the potential of cryptocurrency and how it may shape our future. You know, we have some some beginning inklings of what might be possible in terms of shifting the way banking is done or business is transacted, but it's at the very beginning phase. So the ability to imagine the impact going forward is somewhat limited. Certainly there are people who extrapolate a lot of ideas in a way to predict what may occur in the future. And I guess those people become visionaries, right? Or are visionaries because they're seeing into a future that isn't necessarily guided by the past. And I wonder how, what does it take to access that kind of information, that kind of future reference versus a past reference? When we speak of vision, what does that look like in the context of our existing paradigms? So, I think about this in the context also of sustainability, because I was listening to NPR yesterday, and I was hearing about people that were conservationists, and the conservationists were talking about eradicating certain invasive species. And there was one kind of plant that they characterized as a weed, and I don't remember what it was. I'm sorry about that. But and they were talking about how it was an invasive species and it survived a lot better than some of the native species. And as a result, it was helpful in preserving marshland. And I was thinking about the hubris of human beings to imagine that we know better than nature how to curate nature. So there are all these efforts to bring landscapes back to their original form. But at the same time, here is a species of plant that is thriving in this particular area. And I wonder how we balance the wisdom of nature, where, nature is self-corrective. Nature, like there are algae blooms that humans think might be toxic or negative effect, but those algae blooms are sequestering huge amounts of carbon. So it's kind of nature's reaction to certain things in the environment. And I wonder where we find the balance between our own awareness. Like there on some level, there's this tremendous arrogance, I think, of human beings to say we know how to take care of nature better than nature knows how to take care of nature. I think that there are ways that our practices have compromised nature. And then in those circumstances, there are things that we can do to remediate. But also on the other side of this, nature managed without our stewardship, without us trying to direct and control nature for eons and eons, right? So when we think about visions for the future, in this conservation context, it was interesting because the person that was talking about maybe just respecting the fact that this particular plant was maybe nature's innovation to preserve a certain habitat. Um, I think it's a delicate balance that we need to find. But when we're talking about vision, the planet is changing, temperature is changing on the planet. When we look at trying to restore a habitat or restore certain things in nature, we may not be seeing the whole picture. And, trying to harken back to a model from the past may not be the most effective way to steward or curate the land. I think if we look at that circumstance, we can also look at the way that we envision a future. Like if we're trying to envision a sustainable future and we're creating all kinds of buildings that to house people, maybe we get to look at houses that will degrade rather than houses that will be here forever. I wonder, I wonder if we look at houses that have an expiration date, for example, from ashes to ashes, if we create this closed loop where things become recycled, what does a vision for the future look like? And how do we conceptualize it? People do project all kinds of things into the future, like the rate of, for instance, population growth, right? And project that into the future and say, well, we can't sustain that. The planet can't sustain that. And then some people advocate engineered population control kinds of solutions. And I wonder if nature takes care of that herself or not. It's an interesting thing to think about vision and how do we tap into the future that is not a linear progression from the past, because there are cataclysmic events that occur that shift the course of history and of evolution. We've seen it in the history of the planet, where there are great extinction events and then things change radically through pole shifts or climate shifts or any number of things that create circumstances that might not have otherwise been predicted. So it's an interesting balance to be looking at what's predictive, what's predictable, because there are certainly lots of things that are predictable to a certain degree. And of course, there's what my mom and her friends call the X unknown. And that exists for us too. I think what we get to do is to create new models of conceptualizing things, new models of conceptualization. So Kate Raworth is an economist. I think she would be characterized as an economist. She created a model called donut economics, and it's the first system of economics that I'm aware of that takes into consideration quality of life, as well as like human needs, as well as environmental consequences. And so it's a form of economics, or a structure of economics, or a conceptualization of economics that is actually forward facing. It's not based on, well, I guess it's based on history, but it's not limited by history. It's actually looking into the future to say, well, where is our current economic system leading, and what needs to change in order to create a thriving future? And so it's interesting to me when we talk about vision being stepping outside of the box of convention. So to think beyond the current paradigms. What does it take? What does it take to step outside of that? Because you're probably familiar with the quote, a problem can't be solved from the same level of consciousness from which it emerged. So in order to resolve the problems that we face as humanity, we're called to expand our vision, to expand our thinking, to recognize the box, I think, in order to be able to step beyond it, and to recognize the limitations of the box, to see the edges that need to be expanded or dissolved. And I have a dear friend named Helen Slotjay, and I've mentioned her before. She's the woman who really is responsible for the ban of fracking in New York State. And the way that that was accomplished was first by thinking beyond the standard convention, to be, as Helen says, to think beyond consensus reality. And I think that that's the key to vision, is to be finding a way to penetrate the assumptions. Like at first to recognize, in order to penetrate the assumptions or to shift and create new paradigms, we need to be able to recognize something as an assumption. And so when I think what vision is seeing something fresh, and as Helen often says, to see that the emperor has no clothes, you know, to recognize what's there. Good morning, Maggie. Live life. Yes, I love it. Welcome. It's good to have you here. I don't know if you've been here before, but I have a partner in crime here named Maggie, who's off finding something to eat on my treasured things. But she's a bird that hopefully you will get to see. She's a green-cheeked conure. Anyway, it's so great to have you here with us. And we're talking about vision and what does it take to have real vision. I think it takes an ability somehow to think things newly, to think with a fresh mind, or without the preconceptions of this is the way it's always been and this is how it is, instead of being able to challenge that assumption, that thought form, that structure. And so much of our lives are just business as usual. So Rosalind says, unfortunately, building innovations come from either builders or production plants that make the materials. In making a change to the current model, groups other than builders or production plants have to be involved, putting a value on a concept, but then the community would have to agree that value is important and influences or challenge the current model. Absolutely, absolutely. Beautifully said, Rosalind. I appreciate that. And good morning, Lisa. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us this morning. We've been missing you. So when we're talking about building innovations, right? We talk about, typically we're looking at permanence, and now we're looking at something, there's a new term called biophilia, where we're learning from nature how to utilize things from nature. But the materials that we use, we think of buildings as something that we want to be permanent. And so we're building all these structures all over the place that ultimately are eating up our land and leaving all kinds of. So Lisa says, working a lot. Well, I hope it's going well for you. I hope it's going better, and that you're doing well. I know that you've had some big changes in your life lately, Lisa. So congratulations, and hopefully you're thriving. So, but anyway, this whole idea of building, we think of building permanent structures, right? When we think about the three little pigs, what were they? Straw and sticks and bricks, or something like that, I think. And the bricks were the winner, because the wolf would come and huff and puff and blow the house down, but couldn't do that with the brick houses. And I wonder if maybe we want to be looking at making, like rethinking this whole idea of building. What is it like? What would it be like to have our buildings being part of a natural cycle? It's kind of like this whole idea of green burial. I don't know if you guys are aware of green burial. It's really interesting idea, the ashes to ashes kind of thing. I've heard about a company that's building coffins out of mycelium, like living mycelium, that will then consume the body and break it down. And other forms of green burials where people are just put into the ground or turned into some kind of liquid. And I mean, this can get a little queasy making, but the idea of taking up so much land space by preserving corpses, when land is becoming more and more a diminishing resource, right? So there's so many things that we get to rethink, and there's such an urgency for that, I think, also. So what does it mean to step outside of the box and question? If we look at the world of fashion, fashion is manufactured consumerism to a great idea. To a great degree, right? Because each season there's new fashion. And the idea is you go and you get more, you want to stay with the fashion. So it's creating a perpetually evolving, or not evolving, but a perpetually generated market, right? We keep going around and around and around because there's a fashion's always changing. So you want to stay up with the fashion. So you go and you buy new things. And what happens with the old things? Well, we get to rethink that too. What what about clothing that lasts? What about styles that are timeless? So that what about making holes in clothes fashionable? I know holes in jeans are fashionable, but what about holes in clothes, or ways to patch those holes in clothes that act as a badge of coolness or something, rather than making older clothes be undesirable. Maybe there's something that we can do to preserve our clothes, to make it fashionable, to not be consuming, to not be chasing the latest fashion kind of thing. What would it look like? What would it look like to have clothes that are beautiful and utilitarian as well? And so so Lisa says, oh my God, I love the new burial ideas. I'd like to be added into the sea to help regenerate coral reefs. Ooh, I love that idea. And I don't know what exactly that would look like, but speaking of coral reefs, there are regenerative technologies around, believe it or not, using electricity that helps to regenerate coral reefs. So look up bio rock if you're particularly interested in coral reefs. It's pretty fascinating and important, tremendously important. And Rosalind says, clothes for me, forever yoga pants. So I love that. I love that. And the thing with so many of our clothes is that they're made of synthetics that don't degrade, right? So there's another thing we get to revisit. What does it look like to use materials like bamboo or hemp that grow really easily, that are not hard on the ecology to process, that last a long time? What can we do around these ideas? What do we support with our dollars and cents? And I think it's a gradual transition, but all of this comes back to vision. What can we create in terms of vision for a future that steps outside our current paradigm? So there was I have to run in a minute or two, but there was a summit on cryptocurrency that I watched, and I was shocked to see Dr. Zach Bush, who is a brilliant triple board certified medical doctor, on this summit. And he is a visionary thinker in so many ways. And he is behind one of the founders of Farmers Footprint, which is an organization all about, supporting farmers in regenerative agriculture, which has potential to be able to restore our planet and regenerate, not just restore, but regenerate our soils and our health and all kinds of things like that. So check out Farmers Footprint and check out Dr. Zach Bush. But he was talking about cryptocurrency and how the idea of the blockchain is brilliant, but what's missing is that we hadn't reconceptualized the notion of money, and that even the blockchain is perpetuating this paradigm of scarcity. And the thing that makes something valuable is how little there is of it. And that's been the way our economies have worked for forever. And what he recommended or suggested was to find a way to create a currency that's tied to things that are regenerative. So to tie currency to carbon sequestration, to air purification to things that are regenerative in nature, and to be working with the cycle of nature, which is an unending loop of abundance. And I thought, wow, that's so brilliant. That's so brilliant. And we get to reconceptualize the notion, the foundation of economy, rather than looking at things from the perspective of scarcity and limitation, that we look at a cycle that can be created, that's an unending and regenerative cycle. So lots of visionary ideas to be thinking about today, but what is at the foundation is questioning the status quo, to be opening ourselves to reconceptualize, or to first recognize, right? Cognition, to rethink the systems that we already have in existence. So with that, I invite you to expand your vision, to think newly about the things we take for granted. Just notice something in your life today that you never questioned, and start thinking about how might things be done differently. So Rosalind says, the currency of love. I love animals, so I try to support local farmers at their marketplaces. And that's awesome. The currency of love. That's a beautiful thing. And love begets love, right? So it is a regenerative thing. It is something that the more there is, the more there is, right? The more there is, the more there is created, which is amazing. So Lisa says, where's Maggie? Maggie is eating the sequins off of a wall hanging that I have right now. That's what Maggie's doing, Lisa. Maggie, come here, baby. Maggie, come here. She's going like this, but she's not coming. And she's still chomping on my wall hanging. So anyway, that's it for today. And I so appreciate you and the time that you take to spend here this morning, and the sharing and the contribution that you make, not only to this conversation, but to everybody who is present for it. So with so much love for you, I am Mira Rubin, and this is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And please check out the other amazing programming on Enlightened World. And good morning, Tammy. So good to see you here. Such a pleasure to be with you guys. And I hope to see you back here again sometime very, very soon, with so much love to